Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Maaser Sheni. We're up to Perik Daled Mishna Zayin. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai ben Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. Today's Mishnah is going to discuss whether redeeming Maaser Sheni requires a verbal declaration. The Mishnah says, Hapodeh Maaser Sheni velo kerashem. If someone redeems produce of Maaser Sheni by setting aside coins that correspond to its value, but he did not call it by name, meaning he did not declare when he set aside the coins, this is the redemption for this Maaser Sheni produce. Rabbi Yossi Omer Dayo. Rabbi Yossi says it is enough that he set aside the coins and the Maaser Sheni is redeemed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tzarich Lefaresh, but Rabbi Yehuda says he must specify verbally that the coins are the redemption money for the Maaser Sheni produce, and if it did not, the redemption does not take effect. And the Mefashim explain, Rabbi Yossi holds that since it is clear from the circumstances that his intent is to redeem the Maaser Sheni, the redemption is valid even if he does not express that intent verbally. And the Rav tells us, V'alacha ki Rabbi Yossi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. The Mishnah continues on to discuss Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda have the same dispute with regards to divorce and marriage. If someone was talking with the woman about the subject of her divorce from him or her marriage to him, so it's clear that he meant to divorce her in the case of his wife, or to marry her in the case of an unmarried woman, and he immediately handed her get to her in the case of his wife, or he handed her something that could affect marriage, but he did not specify verbally that this is your get, or you are hereby betrothed to me. Rabbi Yossi Omer Dayo, Rabbi Yossi says it is enough that he handed it to her silently, and the divorce or the betrothal is valid, because here too Rabbi Yehuda holds that since it is clear from their discussion that he is handing her the get in order to divorce her, or the money in order to marry her, these take effect just by his handing them to her, even if he does not declare anything verbally at that time. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tzarich Lefaresh. Rabbi Yehuda says he must specify verbally that he wants this act to affect a divorce or a betrothal, and if he did not, it is not valid, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that unless the man verbally specifies that what he is handing her should affect divorce or marriage, it is not valid. And the Rav tells us, V'alacha ki Rabbi Yossi, the halacha again follows like Rabbi Yossi. And just as a background, in case somebody wants more of an explanation for what it is, a get, when we spoke about Natana Gita v'Kiddusha, he gave her a get, or he handed her something that could affect marriage. A get, the Torah tells us in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 24, Pasuk 1, that a get is a document that contains the name of the husband and wife, and the statement that he is now divorcing her. The Torah states that a husband divorces his wife by handing her such a document. And when the Mishnah says v'Kiddusha, the usual way of effecting marriage is by handing the woman something of value in order to, so to speak, acquire her in marriage. That speaks about more in Masechet Kiddushin, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. And that is in Rabotai of Mishnah Zayin. Mishnah Chet now continues its discussion of transferring the sanctity of Maaser Sheni produce to a coin. Such transfers may be done little by little. Let us say that a coin can buy 8 figs and a person has 8 figs of Maaser Sheni. He does not have to redeem all 8 figs on the coin at once. Rather, he can redeem them one or more at a time and fill the coin with Maaser Sheni sanctity bit by bit. Our Mishnah deals with a case in which a redemption coin changed in value before it was completely filled with sanctity. Haminiach Isar. Someone set aside an Isar coin to redeem Maaser Sheni produce onto it. And he ate against it Maaser Sheni fruits of half its value, meaning he redeemed half an Isar's worth of Maaser Sheni onto this coin so that he could eat those fruits outside of Yerushalayim. And the Mefashim explain a silver Isar is generally worth 8 copper pirutaz. Let's say that a fig costs a pruta. He redeemed 4 figs on the Isar, and the Isar still has, so to speak, room in it to redeem another 4. Now the Isar coin is half Maaser Sheni and half unsanctified. He then went with this Isar coin to another place where the value of an Isar is higher, so that it buys as much as a pundion, which is twice as much as an Isar, and the Rav explains it might be that in that place there's a great demand for Isars, so their value is double what it was in his original location. So in such a place, an Isar is worth 16 pirutot and can buy 16 figs. Ochel alav od Isar, the halacha is that he may now redeem and eat against the unsanctified value left in it another Isar of Maaser Sheni, meaning another 8 pirutas worth, which is the usual value of a whole Isar, or another 8 figs. Because when the Isar doubled in value, the value of its unsanctified half doubled from 4 to 8 pirutot, so you can now redeem another 8 figs onto the coin. Now, had the Mishnah not taught us this, a person might have thought that since the Isar originally had only 4 pirutas and Maaser Sheni in it, and now the Isar is worth 16 pirutot, that there is now room on this coin to redeem another 12 pirutot and Maaser Sheni. So the Mishnah is teaching us otherwise. Both the Maaser Sheni half and the unsanctified half doubled their value, which leaves now only half the coin still available for additional redemption. Basically, not only is the available unsanctified amount on the coin doubled, but the Maaser sanctity also has doubled. The Mishnah now deals with the opposite case, where a coin that was only half Maaser Sheni then decreased in value. Hameniach pundion, someone set aside a pundion coin to redeem Maaser Sheni produce onto it. V'achal lav chetzio, and he ate against it Maaser Sheni fruits of half its value, meaning he redeemed the Nisar's worth, which is half a pundion of Maaser Sheni on this coin, so that he could eat the produce outside of Yerushalayim. And now the pundion coin is half Maaser Sheni and half unsanctified. He then went with this pundion coin to another place where it buys only as much as an Isar, meaning a pundion, the Mefarshim says, is generally worth 16 pirutas. So in the original location, the pundion contained 8 pirutas of Maaser Sheni and 8 pirutas of unsanctified value. But in the new place where it's only worth half as much, it now contains 4 pirutas of Maaser Sheni and 4 pirutas of unsanctified value. Ochel alav od pilag. The halacha is that he may now redeem and eat against the unsanctified value left in it another half, and Isar's worth of Maaser Sheni fruits. And the Mefarshim explained that basically means 4 pirutas worth, because since the unsanctified part of the pundion decreased in value from 8 pirutas to 4 pirutas, he can now redeem another 4 figs onto the pundion. And the Mefarshim explain, had the Mishnah not taught us this, a person might have thought that since the pundion originally had 8 pirutas worth of Maaser Sheni in it, now that the entire pundion is worth only 8 pirutas, it should be considered a full coin of Maaser Sheni with nothing left in it to use for additional redemption. So the Mishnah is teaching us otherwise. Both the Maaser Sheni half and the unsanctified half lost half their value, leaving half the coin still available for additional redemption. The exact opposite of the case we just said before. Now the Mefarshim explained to continue to explain before we continue the Mishnah, coins onto which Maaser Sheni was redeemed or brought to Yerushalayim, where they're used to buy food to eat there. However, instead of actually buying the food with these coins, the person can simply take food corresponding to their value and intend that the sanctity of the Maaser Sheni coins be transferred to the food which he then eats in Yerushalayim. This taking of corresponding food can be done little by little, so that the coins are deconsecrated bit by bit, depleting their sanctity until the value is used up. This next part of the Mishnah is going to teach us that there is a point at which the sanctity of the Maaser Sheni coin is so depleted by the successive taking of corresponding food against them that they cease to be sacred altogether. Hameniach Isar shel Maaser Sheni, one who sets aside an Isar coin of Maaser Sheni to deconsecrate it little by eating against the corresponding food in Yerushalayim, ochel alav achad asar bi-isar. He eats against it until 1/11 of the sanctity is left in the Isar. The Mefarshim explained, for example, the Isar can buy 11 pomegranates. After the person eats 10 pomegranates against the Isar of Maaser Sheni, only 1/11 of its sanctity is left. The echad mimea bi-isar, or in some cases until 100th of the sanctity is left in the Isar. For example, the Isar can buy 100 figs. After the person eats 99 figs against this Isar of Maaser Sheni, only 100th of its sanctity is left. At that point, the remaining sanctity in the Isar disappears automatically, which the reason we will explain soon. Obviously, these two different amounts, 1/11th and 1/100th, cannot refer to the same case. Rather, the smaller amount, the 1/100th, applies in the case of an Isal used to redeem definite Maaser Sheni, while the larger amount, 1/11th, applies in the case of an Isal used to redeem Maaser Sheni of Demai. And the Mefarshim explain, the Mishnah was being pretty encrypted, so the Mefarshim explain, like we explained earlier in chapter 3, Mishnah 3, Demai is produce bought from an Am Haaretz. Now, even though the Am Haaretz has probably tithed the produce properly, the Chachamim, the sages, decree that the buyer must remove some of the tithes, including Maaser Sheni. Since Maaser Sheni of Demai has sanctity only midrabanan by a rabbinic decree, it has the leniency that the remaining sanctity of its Isal coin disappears even if 1/11th is left. In the case of biblical Maaser Sheni, however, the remaining sanctity of its coins does not disappear until only 1/100th is left. Now the Mefarshim ask, why does the last 1/100th of Maaser Sheni sanctity disappear from the coin of biblical Maaser Sheni? So the Tosfot Yom Tov suggests that this is because the last 100th becomes nullified in the rest of the coin, following as follows. Biblically, midoraita, an unrecognizable minority becomes nullified by the majority in the mixture. So in the case of tirumah, let's say, that became mixed in with chulin, the rabbis decree that the tirumah does not become nullified until the chulin majority is 100 times the tirumah. We will speak about this. We did speak about this in Masechet Tirumot, chapter 4, Mishnah 7. Our Tana of the Mishnah holds that in the case of Maaser Sheni, which is less stringent than Tirumah, we are slightly more lenient and we allow the Maaser Sheni part of the coin to become nullified, even if the unsanctified part of the coin is only 99 times as large, which is 1/100th of sanctity left in the Isar. In the case of Demai, however, whose Maaser Sheni is sacred only midrabanan, rabbinically, this Tana holds that even 1/11th of the Isal ceases to be sacred, as Bet Hillel will hold later on with regards to biblical Maaser Sheni. Like we're going to say right now. Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, Hakol Asara. There is no difference between definite Maaser Sheni and that of Demai. In all cases, whether the Maaser Sheni is definite or Demai, 1/10th is the point at which the remaining sanctity in the Isal disappears. And the Mefarshim explain, in many areas of Torah law, a pruta is the minimum amount of money that is considered significant. And Isal, we said, is worth 8 pirutas. 1/10 of an Isal then is 8/10 of a pruta. Therefore, Bet Shammai hold that when the Maaser Sheni portion of an Isal falls to 1/10, which is less than a piruta, the Maaser Sheni portion loses its monetary significance and the coin ceases to have Maaser Sheni sanctity altogether. And the Mefarshim say actually even at 1/9, which is larger than 1/10, the Maaser Sheni content would be slightly less than a piruta, because 1/9 times 8 is 8/9, and that should be considered insignificant. Ubet Hillel omrim, but Bet Hillel say it does make a difference. Bivadai achadasar, in the case of definite Maaser Sheni, 1/11th is the point at which the remaining sanctity in the Isar disappears. Ubidemai asara, but in the case of Maaser Sheni of Demai, 1/10th is the point at which the remaining sanctity in the Isar disappears. And Mefarshim explain, Bet Hillel hold that in the case of definite Maaser Sheni, the Isar remains sacred even at 1/10th, which is 8/10 of a piruta. The reason being because one who redeems his definite Maaser Sheni must add 1/5 of the total, which is 1/4 of the Maaser Sheni's original value. It's really 4 times when we say 1/5 of the total, right? We spoke about this in this chapter, Mishnah 3. The Rambam also speaks about it in Chod Maaser Sheni, chapter 5, Arachat 2-3. So accordingly, even 8/10 of a piruta of Maaser Sheni is significant because together with the added 1/4, 2/10, it amounts to a complete piruta. Only when the Maaser Sheni value of the Isar falls to 1/11th is it insignificant, since even with the extra 1/4, it is still less than a piruta. In the case of Maaser Sheni of Demai, however, Bet Hillel agree with Bet Shammai that the Isar sanctity is lost at 1/10, since the law is that one does not have to add 1/5 when redeeming his Maaser Sheni of Demai, like we taught in Masechet Demai, chapter 1, Mishnah 2. And the Rav concludes and tells us, V'alacha ki Bet Hillel, the halacha does follow the opinion of Bet Hillel. That is in Abutai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen v'amen.